Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down the movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Todd, who completes Wes. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Jack Rabbit Slims. Get served by Hollywood royalty at Jack Rabbit Slims.
I don't hear you.
Motherfucker. Good.
Yeah. It's going to be pretty much like every other episode. You know, I'm just going to
And you hear me
say
now?
what I want to say, get out.
Yeah. And you hear me now?
No,
No, nothing.
no, still don't have it. All right. So this week we're covering Jerry Maguire. If you haven't seen this this film, pause this episode and go watch it. We're going to spoil a lot of stuff. I'm just going to run through everything here because
Nothing still. God damn it.
Wes isn't with us right now. This is kind of like sometimes he'll share documents with me, and if he doesn't actually share it with me,
What about now?
I request access. Oh, there you go.
You
All right.
mother shit. Okay. Oh, damn it. Yeah. Welcome to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Jack Rabbit Slims. Get served by Hollywood royalty at Jack Rabbit Slims. Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Once again, I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers, writers, actors. We do all the things, and we use all that info to analyze critically films, for better or for worse. We like to just see how they tick, what makes them work or not work sometimes, and I don't know, elucidate you, the viewer, give you some of our thoughts and opinions, and maybe get a little bit better at the filmmaking process and the creative process. I think, you know, a lot of the stuff that we do translates into a lot of other creative arenas. For instance, you were in town a couple of weeks ago recording an album. You were in studio working with Matt Noveski from Blue October, Scott Garrett Graham from Kiona. Like, all the heavy hitters were in the room. Your other good buddy from I Am Dynamite. God, why am I suddenly blanking on his name?
Chris Phillips.
Thank you, Chris Phillips. Y'all just call him Phillips, which was
We just call him because there's two guys in that band and they're both named Chris.
Okay.
So one's Phillips and one's Martin. So we just call Martin and Phillips.
That's awesome. How was it, man?
confusing.
You were going in, you were pretty excited on our last episode, and now you've done the deed. How did it go? Did it go as expected?
Yeah. I won't belabor it too much. But yes, it was amazing. I mean, I've been a musician for a long time, and I've been in a lot of studios and had a lot of experiences, some good, some bad. But I gotta say, I don't know if it was because the way I went into it and the attitude I had, or if it was because it was just going to be that way. But it was the best experience I've ever had in a studio, and it was a week long, and it was fantastic. You came and you hung out for a couple of days. Scott was incredible as an engineer, and to see him come, I remember when he didn't know how to use Pro Tools and didn't know how to use a DAW at all. And then he lived with me for a little while. And I had a studio, and so he would ask me, "Hey, can I go up and, mess around?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he basically taught himself. I taught him a few things, but he's so good now, so good and so fast and so pro. And working with Matt was fantastic. And then Matt, my old bass player from Kiona, came in and he played on a bunch of tracks. My best friend Jet, who has been my second best friend behind you. He'd been my music mentor my whole life, came in and played guitar on it and completely transformed the tracks. One of my great friends, Alex Navarro, came in. He scored for a quintet that we had play for, I think, 6 tracks. And he did that on his birthday. It was his birthday when he did that. And came into town from Houston. Just all of my best friend Sergio, who did your audio for on I Won't Let Me Down, or I Won't Let You Down, whatever, I can't remember. On your short film, he came in for a while too, and it was just like how I wanted it to be. Get a bunch of great people in a room that you respect, that respect you and what you're doing, that get it, and then let whatever happen. And but have a plan, but then if stuff deviates, that's okay. Don't stress out. And I mean, it was a whirlwind. It was a lot of work, but it wasn't any work, because I was in the freaking studio like with these people, and it was a beautiful studio, and we got everything we needed. I just wish it wasn't over. I mean, it was wonderful in every way, shape, and form. And then since then, that was about 2 weeks ago, and since then I've spent pretty much every night going through all the tracks, comping vocals, cleaning them up, ready for mix and all that stuff. And we talked before the podcast. Now I got to find somebody to mix it, the right person to mix it, which is, arguably the most important step in the whole thing. After 3 years, now I got to find somebody to hand it to and say, okay, well, do something with this. It's hard. It's like filming a film and then asking somebody else to edit it. It's like, whoa, that's rough. But I know that I'll find the person and it'll be great. But yeah, wonderful experience. It was great to have you in there, man.
Is it really like that in terms of you hand it to a mixer? Can the difference be the same, as drastic? Like you went in, you laid down all your tracks so that you can have a high ability to rearrange things. And so does that happen in the mixing stage where you walk in, you're like, yeah, we had like chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and now it's suddenly like bridge, chorus, verse. Like, does that kind of stuff happen?
No, not that. So when I say, I compare it to editing because like a film, let's say a film is, 90 minutes long on average, right? I mean, if the person who's editing it is picking performances in scenes, and maybe they would move scenes around, but for the most part, it's a song is 3 minutes long, 3.5 minutes long. So any difference is heightened, meaning like, the guitars are featured in this second, right? We're talking about seconds here and moments and beats. And this snare is off by a hair, and so it throws everything else out. Or I'm off pitch in this one moment, but it sounds great. Don't correct that, or like it's all of these tiny, 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 tiny little things. And I know in film it's that way too, but I feel like mixing is very much an attitude, the person's attitude who does it, right? And all of their influences come out in it. Whereas I think like an editor is supposed to be what's your vision as a filmmaker, and I'm trying to make that happen, right? I'm trying to and that's kind of like what a mixer is supposed to do, but they're not going to like rearrange parts, but it might be, hey, what we're going to do in the chorus, we're going to bump the chorus up 1 BPM just to get that extra little feel, right? Or we're going to cut out a little bit of 12K in the guitar so that the vocal right here in this moment or in this section can pop out, and then we'll add that right back in the next section. Like those kinds of things change how you feel. Go back and listen to any Radiohead song after Pablo Honey. Like they all have the reason why that band is so brilliant. There's so many reasons why they're the best band ever in the history of time. But one of the best reasons is that everything has a moment and everything has a time to shine, and it's perfect. And then it backs into the mix and goes away to allow something else. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here, because there's so much going on. I went back through and listened to all my tracks that I have, and I have all these little things. I'm like, I can't hear that in my mix. I think if I took it out, I would probably notice something's gone, but I can't hear that.
Wow. Yeah.
Is there a moment where that could shine? I don't know. Let's give it to a mixer and say, this guy thinks that this is a really cool part. Let's feature that. Those kinds of things happen all the time.
That's pretty cool. I will say, like, I've been in studios before, nothing that official. Like that studio was built to be a studio. All the other studios I've been in have been a bunch of home studios for sure, or other kind of makeshift studios in a building. And that's always interesting. And some of those sessions I got to sit in on were like heavy hitter, kind of people. Probably no one you would know, but like Grammy Award winning artists, I've got to see, them track. But it's just but it was always like hip hop or R&B or gospel. It was never like rock, and it was never like a real studio to that degree that, you know, you got drum heads hanging on the wall with everyone's autographs and platinum plaque on that wall as well. Like that's some pretty cool stuff. And so I was really impressed with how similar to filmmaking it is, because you were the director, and it was interesting watching everyone interact with you, because they were interested, and I don't even know how aware you are of some of those dynamics that were happening. So I had a lot of reasons I wanted to be in there. For one, I just wanted to hang out because you were in town. I'm like, oh, I get to go see something I don't normally get to see, but even better, I get to hang out with Todd and Scott and see them in their real art, their real craft, at the heart of it, something they've been doing their entire lives. And so just getting to be around that was really cool. And then watching how everyone responded to you was very interesting, because it was like,
how?
Hey man, hey, I just want to try something. Check this out. And they were hanging on whether or not you liked it. And if they saw a hesitation or like, and you were like, oh, I don't know. And they're like, yeah, no, sorry, Mr. McFly, that was a dumb idea. Like, I was stupid. Like, God. And other times whenever, you know, you light up and I was suddenly like, yeah, that's it. And you could see them feel like confidence, you know, come over them. They're like, yes, okay, this was the right direction to take this. And it was just really cool to see that still operates and even in music. Now, who the director is kind of up in the air, because in a different session, different studio, it may not be the artist, right? It may be the producer who's calling those shots and leaning heavily. Now, and that's where you get fights, right? Where the artist is disagreeing with your producer, and I'm sure fireworks ensue or whatever. But that was one level that I was really interested to see. And then watching how Matt, because he was your producer, how he was operating and things that he was listening to was very interesting to me, because I have a music background. It's definitely different from what you and Scott and everyone else in that room probably went through, because it was, again, heavily rooted in not just hip hop and R&B, but also just band. I took band very seriously. And so I learned some things, but it's interesting to walk in, even with my schleppy version of musical knowledge, taking music theory or whatever, to walk in still, I have to assume that I still know nothing, because not just in my lack of familiarity with your genre. And so y'all are throwing around references I am not getting, like, oh yeah, the Camelbacks. Yeah. You remember that song off their, like, I have no idea who y'all are talking about right now. But then on top of that, I didn't know the pre-production. I wasn't there. I didn't know what your references were, what you were channeling, what the point of a song was, what arrangements were missing. And so I'm walking in. I remember that first day I got there, I'm sitting and listening, and I'm hearing someone off beat, and I'm like, shut the fuck up, Wes. Like, you don't know what's happening, because you don't know if there's context that's coming that will make sense of this later. And so I just have to sit and so I just tried to be like a cheerleader and a bobblehead. And then otherwise just, you know, not say anything. And so whenever someone turns around from the booth and there's like, is someone coming in early? And I'm suddenly like, yeah. Is someone flat? Yes.
Yes.
And then it was interesting, because then they overcorrected and they were sharp, and you caught that. You were like, they're sharp, right? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. But then the more fascinating part was the stuff that I wasn't hearing that y'all were hearing. And I was suddenly like, I felt like, you know, a complete outsider whenever y'all are listening to these other comps, because y'all did your comps, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I get it. Like, I see what y'all are doing. I don't necessarily always know. And I was hoping that Matt would elucidate a little bit more on why he was making some choices. And so I appreciated every time you were like, well, hold on, let me just pick your brain. Why'd you do that one instead of this one? And he's like, oh, yeah, it's because I think it's setting up this other thing for later. And like, oh, okay, I get it. And so those moments were really cool. But then y'all went and started doing the comps for Phillips, and I was lost. I was like, they're all listening and loving something, and I'm not hearing it at all. And so I was like, and so I had to double down. I was like, started really searching through the track, through all the pieces of it before I finally found it. And it took me a few minutes before I started consistently finding what y'all were hearing. And I was like, oh, okay. I see him in the track now. Because
he was singing something that was in the track from a reference or something that you're listening to?
Yeah, because he was doing your backups.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just wasn't hearing where his backups were. And so it took me just a minute, and I was like, they're listening, and to them it's night and day. Whatever he's doing is night and day. And for me, and part of that's probably y'all were there to hear him lay those tracks. And I wasn't, but the other part is, y'all are so familiar with what you're wanting out of it. And I just, it was really interesting because the look on y'all's faces was bliss. And I was like, I can't fucking hear it. Like, I don't, because I would have expected.
Well, you might, because you're listening to a mix I did, so you can't really hear everything.
But it was awesome. I was, and there's some other things that were happening that I was like, man, this is really fascinating just to see the workflow. And I could see how you were rushed. You did it in a week, and I could see how someone with the, whatever, all the time in the world could spend that entire week on one track because there was this moment that happened that was really cool. Y'all were tracking the some strings, and you just had this sudden idea of like, man, I'm hearing something else in this track that we don't have. Hey, can we try this? And it was really funny to watch Alex kind of go through this process because I think I identified a lot with him because whenever you approached him, there was this look of annoyance, and he was hiding it. He was doing his best anyways to hide it, but I think we both were able to understand, like, he's in a workflow, he's in a mindset, and he's trying to get something right now. And suddenly that's being interrupted to try something that's completely off script. You had to go and you're like, hey man, I'm hearing this thing. And you had already kind of talked it over with Scott, and Scott was like, yeah, I think you're right, bro. Pitch it to the guy who's on your dime. And and you do, and you're like, man, I'm hearing this thing. He's like, hold on. Oh. And he had to like write his vision of the song, and it had to like, there was this propagation like time that had to go through before he was like, yeah. Oh, and then he goes in, he's like, give me a minute. And suddenly you're hearing it and it's adding to the track. And I'm like, yeah, that's just like film. When we're on set, you're trying to get a thing, and then suddenly someone, your actor comes up to you and is like, hey man, I was thinking maybe like, we just set the thing on fire. And you're like, wait, hold on, man. We're trying to get to scene. And it was really cool. And I could see how with time, everything changes, but there's something else that's happening with the compressed time. This other whole thing is happening. They're both good. Neither are bad. They're just their own separate things. And it was fascinating. I also took a bunch of notes just from a storytelling perspective of what's happening with the dynamics in this room. What's happening whenever someone's in the booth? Are people talking shit, or just telling jokes? And I could imagine being in the booth and feeling like, oh, they're making fun of me. And so insecurity can start to come up when in fact they're joking about something else entirely. Like all you see are people laughing, and you don't know if it's about you or not, because sometimes it might be, it just depending on who it is and what's happening. Sometimes it's not, like, and a lot of times it's not. There's just funny stuff happening on a text. Like, oh, I just got this text. You got to read this. Oh, that's hilarious. Ha ha ha. And all you see is the laughter. And
that's interesting. I was going to ask what you were doing, because I know that you were writing some stuff and everything. So did you get anything out of those notes?
Yeah, it was interesting because the vibe in there was so good. Everyone was so like in love with each other. And obviously I mean that in the best way possible. That I was a little disappointed. Like,
you wanted some fucking fireworks.
Yeah, that's right. And so part of me was really tempted to beg Scott, like, hey, could I pretend to be an intern and just sit in the room for a few weeks, just observing everybody? Because I had to throw away.
He would say yes.
He would.
Oh yeah. He would say yes to that, and you get some stories out of that. He gets some characters in there. Yeah, for sure.
It would be interesting just to see all those dynamics when things are not going well, and why and over the what. Because I can imagine a scenario where you go up to Alex like, hey, I want to do these stabs. And he's like, hey, man, no, It's not with this. And then suddenly it's like, well, I'm the artist. Well, I'm the composer. What now? Like, and and it could go really wrong.
What now? What now? We're at a stalemate. That's hilarious.
It could be. Really
no, I know
entertaining.
exactly that moment that you're talking about with Alex. But that's why I wanted all my friends there. I've known Alex since 2002. I've known him for over 20 years. So we don't talk every day or anything like that, but I know him and I know what annoys him. I knew that was going to annoy him. And I knew that was going to be he was going to need a minute. And I gave it to him. I said, yeah, do, whatever. And I backed away, but it wasn't that I wanted to replace his part. It was that I was also hearing another one.
Yeah.
That goes well, that complements what he did. And I had already said multiple times before that, I'm loving what you're doing. This is changing stuff in the best way. And I'm welcome all your ideas. And I think it's fantastic. And when you have an atmosphere like that, where nobody feels like, and he took it well too. And I knew he would, because I know him, but like, and he's a professional, he's a total pro. I mean, the guy, he was, Engelbert Humperdinck's musical director for like 7 years or something. The guy is top tier. And I would also have been okay if he would have said, that's deviating too much. It's going to take too long to explain to them. I just think that we need to move forward. I would have also probably been okay with that, but if I hadn't said anything, that's what I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
Because if I don't say anything, and then later on in the mix or when I'm going through the tracks, I'm like, God, I'm hearing this, and I don't have that option, then I'm kicking myself. If I said something and he pushes back, I will also internally question, is this necessary and how necessary is it? Because
you
that's
trust
also,
him.
yeah, I totally trust him, and he is a complete pro. So if he says that's not going to work because of X and Y, I'm not going to just say, oh, you're right. But I will stop and just take a second to think, how important is this to me right now? Because I have a week with these people. Today, I have like 6 hours with these people. So, and I got to get 6 songs. So is it really that important where we got to stop shit for 5 minutes to figure this out? Probably not. If he pushes back, probably not that important. But, and then also and we can move on to the actual reason why we have this podcast. But just to say, I want to throw this out here because I've been having this feeling, and I think it's really important to say, and I'm probably going to make a YouTube video about it. I have been working on this record for 3 years. I wasn't working on it to make a record. I was just writing stuff when I felt like writing, and it just happened to take 3 years. It has every bit of me in it. There is no moment in this that doesn't ooze with who I am. And so for that reason, it's my favorite thing that I've ever made. And now that I'm at this 9th hour and I've got everything down, tracked the vocals, tracked everything, I've got everything cleaned up and I'm ready to send it off to somebody to mix it. I'm having this feeling like none of it matters. I'm having this feeling like this is going to be like everything else that I've ever made, and nobody's ever going to give a shit. Nobody's ever going to hear it. And I think that that's right. That nobody's ever going to give a shit. And I'm trying to remind myself, and I'm just saying this because I want people to hear it, because just because you make something doesn't mean that you're going to feel good about putting it out in the world. I want to say that I have put everything I have into this, and I still am going to put it out, knowing that probably it's not going to like do anything. Probably 1,000 people in this lifetime will hear it, and that's it. But I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to find a mixing engineer, pay them to do it. I'm still going to find a mastering engineer, pay them to do it. I know who I'm going to have mastered, but I'm still going to, and then I'm going to put it out on the platforms and do all that, but thousands of people a day release stuff. It is nearly impossible to get noticed. And I'm not saying that I won't necessarily, I guess, but I'm just having this feeling of like existential dread that no matter what, it's going to fall on complete deaf ears. And for music, that is the worst. That is the worst. And so I'm having this feeling, and I'm just saying it out loud because I haven't said it to even my wife or anything. And we've just been talking so much about it in this podcast that I just want to say it out loud. But I didn't, like I said, I didn't set out to make a record. I didn't set out to start playing music again, even. I just wanted to make something. And so I'm just going to keep making it, and I'm going to put it out or figure out something, and it's just going to be out there. So, yeah.
Kudos, man. I think any artist listening is like, I know exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
It sucks. The nice thing about being a filmmaker is at least I can submit it to film festivals, and there's a path to success there. It's long and very dim, not a lot of lighting, but it's there. Not aware of anything that exists for music. Like your best case scenario is probably to be featured in a movie or a TV show that then has people Googling your stuff, and now it's like, oh, and suddenly you're whatever, Kate Bush again. And so damn. Yeah, dude, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Cause I same thing, man. I get that feeling every piece I make. It's, with the faintest hope, but that's a really cool thing to say out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be famous with it either. I wouldn't, even if that were to happen, I don't necessarily want that. I just, want it to not like do like everything else that I've ever made, which is, it doesn't get the recognition that I think it deserves. And I'm being honest that I think that the stuff that I've made over the last at least couple of years, like my last album, I went back and listened to it recently with Kiona. It's great.
It's a great album.
It's really good album. And we put everything we had into that, and it, hasn't done anything for us, and that's fine, I guess, but I don't want that for this. I want something bigger. I want it to touch more people. That's the thing. I want more people to hear it because I think that I have something to say more so than any other time.
Wow.
And so hopefully it'll find some legs and reach some people and help people, who knows?
I think it will. Listening to it, man, I was really impressed with everything you're making. And
thanks, bro.
Yeah, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on you.
Thanks, man. Same with you. With that, what film are we doing? Today we are covering Jerry Maguire. Beautiful rom-com. That we spend 45 minutes talking about emotional stuff. If you haven't seen Jerry Maguire, please pause this episode. Go watch it. I believe it is streaming on Netflix. Because we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
we'll spoil some things. We'll look at some of the story and writing, using audience expectations against them. Some of the cinematography, traditional lighting and whatnot, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. When a sports agent has a moral epiphany, he puts his new philosophy to the test as an independent agent with the only athlete who stays with him. Written and directed by Cameron Crowe. Cinematography by Janusz Kaminski. Sure. Featuring Tom Cruise as Jerry Maguire, Cuba Gooding Jr. as Rod Tidwell, Renee Zellweger as Dorothy, Regina King as Marcee, and Jonathan Lipnicki as Ray.
Well, I don't need you to stick.
What do you want?
I don't know.
My soul or something?
Well, why not? I deserve that.
What if I'm not built that way?
I think we made a mistake.
Oh, listen, what if it's true? It's great at friendship, bad at intimacy. I mean, come on, it's the theme of my bachelor film, for God's sake.
I know. I watched it. I sort of know it by heart.
I don't like to give up.
Please, Jerry. My need to make the best of things and your need to be responsible. If one of us doesn't say something about it now, we could lose 10 years being polite. Let's just call this next road trip what it really is. a nice long break.
What about Ray?
Well, you'll be friends.
Friends?
Yeah, friends. Of course you'll be friends.
I'll take him to the zoo. So this break is a break up. That's...
Come on, Jerry. You know this isn't easy for me. On the surface, everything looks fine. I've got this great guy. And he loves my kid. And he sure does like me a lot. And I can't live like that. It's not how I'm built.
She's got a secret garden where everything you want.
So, Todd, when this came out, 1996, this was a monster hit. Like, it permeated all of pop culture on every level. And so since then, it's hard to not hear a Show Me the Money reference. Literally, yesterday, I saw that reference, like, on a text thread. Someone was making a joke, and I was like, God, would you believe tomorrow we're actually doing that episode? And it just forever, right? In fact, the very first intro I wrote for our show was "You Complete Me," right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, one, how did you feel about it back then? And how does it sit with you today?
I mean, I think, back then I liked it just because everybody liked it, and
Yeah.
it was just kind of like, there were two, and watching it again, I'm like, man, that was a pop reference. That was a pop reference. The "help me help you, you complete me." Show me the money, obviously. There's so many just one-liners that, but, and watching it now, what I look at now is watching Tom Cruise and Cuba Gooding Jr. just put on a freaking masterclass. I mean, and Zellweger too, like absolute masterclass in delicate yet pointed performances. I mean, look, Tom Cruise, I think he's great at action. And we love all the Mission Impossible stuff, and we love all of the action-packed films that he does. But I think this one, more than any other film that I can think of that he's done, is just, it's so nuanced and delicate in the way he interacts with Dorothy, the way he interacts with Ray, and then the way he interacts with Cuba's character, I forget his name. It's all different, and yet is all his character, right? And I think that's it's really important when he's sitting on the couch and he's talking to Ray. He's still Jerry. He very much still is Jerry, and he forgets that at points, and then he realizes, oh, I'm talking to a 4-year-old. Okay, cool, yeah. The human head weighs 8 pounds, right? Which that's another reference too. Yeah. So I think the writing is still super strong. I think, there are some moments that date it a little bit, but for the most part, I can put those aside knowing how old this film is, and I can just watch it for what it is, which is just, like a story about a guy who wants something, but doesn't know how to be that thing in order to get that he wants. And learning you think he learns what's really important at the beginning of the film, but then he really learns later on. And I think that just goes to, that's another good thing about it, is that it keeps telling you that, what's important to you changes over time. You're not just, oh, I'm one way, and then I realize, oh no, this is how I'm supposed to be, and now I'm this way forever. That's not how it works. And in fact, his character goes through, he has the epiphany at the beginning, which, by the way, I think it's awesome. He identifies, I am a jackass and all I've cared about is money and I don't even care about people. And now I want to be different. And that happens right at the beginning. And you're like, oh, okay. So already immediately he has depth to him. He's thinking about something else. He's trying to change. He can't, it's hard for him to do it, but you know, we start off strong. And then he's still himself. He still cares about money, obviously, and he wants to be successful. But eventually he's forced to embrace the thing he wrote, the document he wrote, and he's trying to make the best of it. But then he grows into something else too. So he has like 2 epiphanies in this film. And I think that that's really great. And he's a fantastic actor. Ray was perfect in it. Zellweger was perfect in it. I think it's a really delicate film. I'm really glad you picked that scene. That scene hit me hard, real hard. And I think it's a universal conversation that if you've never had, man, congratulations to you. You know, that's never happened. But it's the way that they do it is fantastic. The timing of it is really great because a lot of times those conversations, like in real life, could be very long. You know, people dance around things that they want to say, or they say something and somebody else needs a minute to digest it, like a literal minute or longer. And you know, so anyway, that scene is probably my favorite scene in the entire film, honestly. Yeah. And I also tried to watch it with the idea in mind of like those iconic moments not being cheesy. You know, the "you complete me" line. I mean, that's a loaded gun line, you know, because earlier in the film, the sign language, the people who were speaking sign language, that's what they said to each other, or the guy said to her, "You complete me." So they bring it back around full circle, or Cameron did. And a few others too. So I realized that, and I didn't realize that the first time that was from earlier in the film when she leaves with him. And anyway, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Loved every minute of it. It hooked me right at the beginning. Tom Cruise is brilliant. He's just brilliant. And nothing he does is bad.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah. I think for the same reasons in terms of whenever it first came out, I basically liked it because everyone else liked it. And it's fun. It's a really fun movie. One of the things about this is it hits all the demographics. So like it's the perfect date night film. It's got sports, it's got comedy, it's got romance. Everyone's going to get something out of this movie. And so marketing wise, it's a absolute surefire hit. And I think though, I have a good friend, my friend Juwan, who was like for years, and it still might be the case, that this was his favorite movie. And I've never understood it. I've never understood that level of appeal, because the romance is so the weakest part of this film, not in terms of them individually, because like you said, Zellweger is putting on a clinic, but there's something, I don't know, half-hearted in the resolution of it. And I want to interrogate that a little bit more in a little while, but it's still, I mean, I watched it twice. I watched it this morning, and I was like, man, it sings. Like, it's easy to watch. It's easy to get emotionally invested in it. It's easy to laugh when it's time to laugh. And there's nothing that's difficult about this movie to engage with. And even some of the music is appropriately timed. Like he waits in that scene we just played. He waits until the end before he starts cueing the music. And now you can get that minute. You can have that minute where they're processing, and you don't feel the minute. Because the music starts to carry you into the emotions that they're experiencing. And it's, yeah. And so I can always watch this movie. I feel like if it's ever on, I'm not going to have a hard time sitting down and like engaging with it. But there is something else going on underneath the skin that I've been always trying to put my finger on. Like, why also do I not feel very overjoyed for them at the same time? There is this element of settling that's happening. And I do want to poke at that a little bit before I start running down that, because I definitely am going to want your thoughts on that. I have just a couple of very simple cinematography notes, which is the first, lots of 3-point lighting in this thing. This is so traditional.
Yes. Yeah.
Not 100%, but like 80% of this. There's
Yeah.
a nice little kicker in the back that gives you a nice little rim light, some fill, and a nice key light. Like, it's super traditional. And that's also Janusz Kaminski, however you pronounce it, Janusz maybe. He does a lot of Spielberg's work ever since, I think, Slocum left. And so he's lit every single one of Spielberg's films since then, to this day, I'm pretty sure. And he's just a traditional guy. Like, if you watch most of Spielberg stuff, still often a lot of 3-point lighting technique and all that. Personally, that's just not my taste. But there is a charm to it, especially whenever you're watching an older film like this. It's like, oh, you know what? Yeah. There's.
That's how they used to do it 25 years ago.
That's right. And you know what? That's a movie. It's a movie looking movie.
It's a movie looking. Can I use that? That's a good one.
You may. Remember that when we get back to recommendations, because that'll make more sense, I think. But the other cinematography thing I noticed they kept doing, not the entire film, but certainly around her house and with her, a heavy level, is the filters. They're throwing on probably pro mist filters, maybe some stockings underneath the lens. And it's this filter that blooms the highlights, right? It creates this kind of dreamy, hazy, romantic glow to everything, to the highlights in particular. And so you get that feel whenever you're watching them, and it just feels, so dreamy. And of course you have Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger, so there's a lot to be dreamy about on screen. It's nice. It works. I don't know that I'm ever drawn to doing that kind of effect myself. But well crafted, it can put you in the mood or whatever. It can suck you into the atmosphere that they're creating on scene, on screen. And so, yeah, story and writing wise though, let's look at some of the stuff. And first off, why does this movie work? And to me, it's not necessarily because of the writing, though there is some very nicely written moments. I don't want to say Cameron Crowe did a bad job writing and directing. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. Because look at a moment like they're at dinner, that dinner they go out on their first date, even though it's not technically starting as a date. It's this very nebulous middle nothing that they're starting in. And they're at the table, and Jerry's talking about his ex-fiance, and then she starts talking about her ex, and it's like she suddenly remembers what her sister told her before she went. And it's such good advice. She's like, don't let him make you his shoulder to cry on, Mm-hmm. So she's listening to that, and he starts asking about her ex. She looks at him. She says, Jerry, long beat. He's like, what? Let's not tell our sad stories. Oh, great. It's this sonic boom that she kind of levels silently. And it's so perfect. I love it so much because it gives her ambition in the relationship. Because if she lets that continue, she's no longer qualifying as a romantic interest. But it also lets her gently stand up for herself in a way that honors her character, because her character isn't the obnoxious, rub your face in it kind of character. She is gentle. She is a kind, loving person. This is one of the things that we love about her, and we'll certainly be coming back to that. But it's a really well-written moment for all those reasons. It gives her agency, and also gives her a motive and ambition. It's not just I'm saying it to say it. It's because she also wants something out of this relationship. And so in every way, she has a really nicely written character. And I think that moment is just a very good, strongly written moment in ways that you don't suspect on its face. And I think why this movie works is because it's an actor's film. Man, it was funny listening to you talk about it, because I was like, it's like we're looking at the same notes. We're seeing the exact same movie, because all the emotion is delivered by the performances. Very little, I think, is crafted in the writing or story structure. To your point, it opens very strong, and it gives him a very strong moment. And Again, we'll be coming back to that. But for the most part, it's actors putting on clinics. Like Renee Zellweger carries the romance on her back, right? Her delicate performance breaks your heart and is making us hope to see it taken care of. Like, we don't want to see her heart broken. We want to see her, loved, and see, all her sacrifice honored and paid for. And then Cuba Gooding Jr. is carrying the comedy brilliantly. Like, I love, there's this little phone call that happens between him and Ray, right? Rod calls Jerry, and the little kid, Ray, picks up the phone, and Rod just starts yelling, right? He's just off on a tangent from the get-go. And it's so good because Ray never passes the phone. He just starts talking to him. And Rod takes it seriously. He plays it to the bone. He's like, well, no, this is what I'm going to tell you, blah, blah, blah. And Ray's like, okay, I got to go now. And he's like, no. It's nice talking to you. He's like, talking is only a primitive form of communication. Like, he's trying to get his points in, and it's so earnest, and I love it. He plays it. In fact, one of my favorite sequences from the film is when, I love what you said, like Tom Cruise, who is just inhabits Jerry Maguire. I can't really see Tom Cruise sometimes, which is the best honor. But Tom Cruise and Cuba are in this sequence at the airport towards the beginning whenever Jerry Maguire loses Kush.
What are you doing with me, Rod?
What?
Don't you even see? I'm finished. I am fucked. 24 hours ago, man, I was hot. Now, I'm a cautionary tale. You see this jacket I'm wearing? You like it? Because I don't really need it. Because I'm cloaked in failure. I lost the #1 draft pick the night before the draft. Why? Let's recap. Because a hockey player's kid made me feel like a superficial jerk. I had 2 slices of bad pizza, went to bed, and grew a conscience.
Well, boo fucking who? I got a shelf life of 10 years tops. My next contract has got to bring me the dollars that'll last me and mine a very long time. Shit, I'm out of the sport in 5 years. What's my family gonna live on? Huh? Don't you get me? So I don't want to hear your shit, Jerry. I don't want to hear your nah. Oh, I lost Kush, Avery, and shit.
Have another drink, please. All right?
Anybody else would have left you by now. But I'm sticking with you. I said I would. And if I got to ride your ass like Zorro, you gonna show me the money. You gonna show me the money. Shit. We together on this. You know what I'm saying? We gonna be one. The both of them. You know?
Oh my God.
Oh, both of them are just hitting on all cylinders. Like, it's magic. And I just can't see how that would have been written. Like, you can write it to some extent, but you are heavily relying on your cast to produce the magic. Cuba Gooding won an Oscar for Best Supporting. Like, and rightly so. And he went for it on stage. I think that's a famous. I think he does a flip, right? Was that what it was? He did a flip, or like a. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah.
He did a count to 6 on the stage or something. But yeah, like, there's only so much you can write. And he gave them enough, and they just went for it. And they're both playing it to the absolute bone. Even Tom Cruise, right, is playing his failure up in a way that is true to his character. Like, at the start of that sequence, right, he's like, what are you doing with me? I'm cloaked in failure. Like, it's failure.
The way he delivers that is so good.
It's so good. And it's just amazing acting. They're playing jazz. They're living out their characters to the maximum. Same thing. I mean, Jonathan Lipnicki as Ray, kid talent is such, I mean, to quote Cameron Crowe here, like, it's popcorn in the bag, right? It might pop, it may not, like, you don't know. And having kids on set, that's a roll of the dice. And it looked like Lipnicki showed up on set every day ready, and just was absolutely amazing. And as a character for this film, he's absolutely adorable. He's infectious. Like if he's smiling, you're smiling. You have to love this kid, or you may be like a sociopath. Like there's no middle ground. This is the sociopath like Turing test or something. And then Regina King like is bringing so much, and she's barely on in the film for like probably 15 minutes tops. But you remember her, you feel her presence. Her on the phone with Jerry whenever Rod is down in the field is incredibly emotional and heartbreaking. Adds so much weight to the scene while we're waiting to see if Rod is okay. Without her, that scene doesn't sing. It doesn't make sense. But with her and her family at the house and her falling apart, it's magic. Like you get pulled in, you're on the verge of tears. You're seeing life through her eyes. And then you have Tom Cruise, who's playing, you know, quote unquote, the straight man, right? His malleable performance allows all these actors to sing because he does shift, and it's honorable to his character to shift according to who he's in the room with. When he's with Rod, he's a salesman. You know, when he's with Cush, he's still like the salesman. And the way he's acting with Rod before and after he loses Cush, two completely different characters, but still the same guy. The way he acts with Dorothy, like he's there and he's trying his best to be there, but you also see the light click on when Ray enters the room. Like it's just absolutely an actor's film. And it doesn't work without all these actors. Like maybe you could swap them out and have a pretty good film, but it's going to be a completely different film with completely different interpretations. Maybe Show Me the Money isn't a thing without Cuba Gooding Jr. I don't know. I doubt it. You know, I feel like he's the only one that's bringing that to life in the way that he did. Yeah. Writing wise, also, the love interest is a very kind of easy swing. This is T-ball kind of stuff for a writer to do, because there's two different women as love interests, right? You have his fiance, who is hot trash, right? She's easy to hate, which makes it very easy to root for Dorothy because his ex-fiance is mean. She's cold. Even their sex is disconnected and unemotional. You can see him. He just had sex and it looked like he got through with running a bleachers or something, a marathon. It did not look enjoyable at all. And
sounds pretty enjoyable though.
Yeah.
When you describe it like that.
Right.
Anyway.
And by contrast, you have Dorothy, who is amazing, right? She's kind. She reads deeply into people, loves her kid, of course. Their sex is personal. It's emotional, which is funny because with them, we don't see any sense of nudity. Whereas with his fiance, like it's very like lewd. And it's so interesting if you look at the way he does nudity and sex in this versus Vanilla Sky. They're both doing very interesting and similar, but polar opposite things. And with this, like it's so much more intimate, despite there being absolutely no nudity. It's just beautiful. She's sympathetic, right? She's discarded and unappreciated. And it just makes you kind of throw your hands at the sky. Why, God? Why can't this beautiful, charming, loving woman find love? Like she lands in the middle of the divorcee, get together. It just feels all wrong. And my question is then, does Jerry ever earn her? And my instinct is no. But we love her and are rooting for him. Therefore, ergo, hence, them ending up together satisfies our expectations, even though emotionally it's false. Like the story structure, the writing never justifies it. Instead, we just kind of get emotionally manipulated into wanting it. And therefore, when they achieve it, we're glad, we're satisfied, because that's what you want in a movie. And that's what I mean by using audience expectations against us. Like, we signed up for a romance, damn it. You're going to give us a romance. And if they end up not together, you feel kind of, like wronged. Like you didn't serve us properly. And so Jerry can't be alone, right? He's bad at intimacy. That's echoed throughout the entire film. Belabored even, and therefore Jerry is never alone we never see him alone. Even at the end, whenever he breaks up, or she breaks up with him, he's not alone for even 24 hours before he goes back to Dorothy. Like at no point, I think that's the only way you could have earned it, is to actually see him be alone and actually see him come to terms with himself. Maybe. And I will give some opportunity for disagreement here, but I think the idea that he's trying to get across is, at the beginning he's telling the engagement story, and he's like, I'm not big on grand gestures, I think is what he says, and here we are. And then at the end, it resolves his issues through the grand gesture. I think that's the idea, right? Is this his version of intimacy, where it's him standing in his own personal spotlight that we've seen all the athletes kind of take up, and now he's got an audience, he's in the spotlight, he's on the stage, confessing his love for his wife. So it's, for me, like stepping back and analyzing, why do I not feel great about them ending up together? Instead, I just feel kind of good. And it's, I think because of that, it's because, he never really earns it. He never analyzes himself, but we'll come back to this. I want to first look at some of the tidbits that are underneath the writing, because we look at the first date with Jerry and Dorothy, and this is when they're getting ready to leave, and Ray asks for a hug, right? And he gives Jerry a kiss, and this melts Dorothy and stirs our emotions, because we see her getting emotional. We're like addicted to everything Renee Zellweger is doing here, and everything that Ray is doing. And so you're also kind of seeing Jerry, it just kind of bounces off of him. Instead, he's like, okay, ready to go? Like, okay. But the impact on that we're imagining it's having on Ray through Dorothy's emotions, like, it's big. And to me, I'm looking back and I'm like, I'm also wondering, is this a bit manipulative, right? Has Jerry really earned Ray's love? Maybe, maybe not. We've seen some moments of them together, but I don't know that Jerry's ever done anything to earn that kind of love and appreciation. I guess just for existing, but I don't know that that works outside of real life. Like, yeah, your kids love you because you're dad. Fine, I'll concede that. But there's also years that y'all spent together, and along the way you've done some things to earn that. In the film, I don't know that that's really earned. Instead, it's very reliant on the chemistry between your cast, which is fine. Like, I don't think that's the wrong way to go. I just think in the writing, if I'm asking myself, why is everything not completely fitting together? This is one of those reasons, that there's just manipulation written into it instead of necessarily earned through the story structure and the beats. Just so that I make sure I'm not stripping this thing completely bare. There are some really nice scenes. There's an efficient scene that I really, really liked, which was Jerry needs money. This is after that scene where Dorothy kind of throws a hook at Marcee and Rod, where she's like, he's broke. And they're like, oh, whoa, well, okay, maybe we'll step off the gas a little bit. And we cut to they're on that commercial, right? With the camel, it's cars or something. And he's wearing this turban, and it's just, it's silly, right? It's comedy. And then Jerry's like, no, you know what? This is beneath you. Let's go. And I love that. It reinforces Jerry's principle of choosing his client over money. Better relations. Let's really believe in our guys. It's reinforcing that. And it also gives a chance for Rod and Jerry to connect and build their friendship, right? He starts asking for advice, like, hey, man, I'm dating a single mom. What do you think about that? And he's like, whoa, I come from a single mom household. And so you're tread lightly, my friend. And they have an honest conversation that builds to later. It's a really efficient way to kind of build character depth. And this movie is very efficient, I want to point out, because you think that we have to see an entire relationship come together and fail with the fiance. We also got to see another relationship come together and fail and then come back together. And then we also got to see a career kind of get made. The whole sequence of Rod getting knocked out, you have to build in a lot of time for that, because it can't just be, we cut to the football game and he catches and falls. And it's like, oh no, you got to build into it. This is Monday Night Football. This matters in the context of this character's goals. And we need to see why this game in particular matters. Because one, you're going against the Dallas Cowboys, who in the mid-90s ruled everything. They would be T-Rexes on the Jurassic Park field. They'd won 3 Super Bowls out of 5 years and were making a bid for a new one, blah, blah, blah. They had, the big 3, Aikman, Irvin, Emmitt Smith. They just were incredible. And so you have to kind of start building up, why does this game matter? And everyone in 1996 would have understood that all implicitly. But you then need to spend time in the game, behind the scenes of the game, before you can finally get to him getting hit, and then have time for that. You got to really let that breathe to let it build as a potential problem, right? This could end his career, which bankrupts Jerry and hurts this guy that we've come to really like, even though he's a pain in the ass. And so that all takes a ton of time, and then to resolve it like that, and to do all that in just this one section of the film in under 220 is pretty impressive. He's doing a lot here with the time he's given. And so this is a very efficiently made movie for sure. The one thing that there's a promise that's never fulfilled is the zoo. There's this whole thing built up with the zoo. My dad took me to the zoo.
I thought they went at the end.
That's the thing. They fulfill it off screen. We never see them go to the zoo. Instead, it's like, hey, what'd you think of the zoo? It's like, oh, yeah. Hey, what did you think of that bad guy we knocked out, in between scenes? Like, oh, it was great. Okay, I want to see this little kid at the zoo. He's always been talking about.
That's true. Okay, I see. So your expectations weren't met because you didn't get to go to the zoo.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
But this whole film, I think, creates a semblance of completeness, right? We open on a hockey player that gives Jerry his wake-up call. He's concussed. He has a wife and kid. Does all of this sound, familiar? And then Jerry to it is completely indifferent, right? He walks out of that room and he's like, no one could keep not all VR Super Trooper Power Rangers could keep your dad away from the hockey or whatever. It's like, F you, buddy. And then that's his wake-up call, right? At the end of the film, it's reflected perfectly to a large degree. Rod is on the ground. He's unconscious. Jerry's on the phone with Rod's family. But now he's worried. And this results in him realizing that he needs Dorothy for some reason that's not particularly, it's basically he sees let me say it this way. The first wake-up call is very, very clear. He's insensitive and he needs to change. And it's reflected. It's perfectly built in with the interaction with the kid. The last wake-up call is a little bit more invisible. He races home to resolve the story after seeing Rod talking to Marcee. And he's like, I can't call my wife. Like, that's not a very strong push and pull. Instead, it's him running through an airport. But there's no real test that shows he's capable of loving Dorothy, because the whole problem up to this point is he's not able to be alone by himself. Therefore, he reaches out for connection. And I think that's the real test that we never got to have. Instead, it's lightly peppered in with this idea of him being intimate in front of a group of strangers. And I just don't know that emotionally feels like it's fulfilling the bigger issue of him being by himself. I think the one argument you could make, in my estimation anyway, is the idea is he is incomplete. And that's why he needs her. And that's the whole, you complete me. It's like, okay, yeah, fine. I can't be alone. That's because I need you. And I need you because I love you. And that's the part that I don't buy, is that he loves her. I don't know that that's true. I know that she loves him through her actions, right? She left her job and she refused to go seek another job. Like, she stood by him through thick and thin, and her love was tested all along the way. So it was never just words. I don't know that his love was ever tested in a way that let us see very clearly that he loves her. And so it feels like they're both kind of settling for a lesser love, except the fact that it's an emotionally competent scene. Like, the performances are what make it believable for me. And I think that's why this movie works. It's not because it's written in a way that the characters really are tested and find the resolution through each other. Instead, they're tested in their acting, and the acting is so freaking good. I want to believe it, and therefore I do, and therefore it works, and therefore I like it.
I fully agree. But it's also hard because I kind of felt that way too. And then also felt that way like when what's Cuba's character's name? I forget. Rod,
Tidwell,
thank you.
yeah.
When Rod gets hurt, right? So, he's standing there Jerry's standing there and he calls Rod's wife, right? And I mean, so I'm just analyzing this because he calls her his wife, which he didn't have to do. He didn't have to call her. So that's a good thing. But also, if Rod gets hurt, he gets no money. So it's really hard to you just kind of understand he's different and because they've had this relationship the whole film, you can't imagine him being concerned about the money right now.
Yeah.
You just can't. He's not that guy anymore to you, right? But there is this element that's just there.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, is it about the money? It's not, right? It's not about the money, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, it's there. Maybe it's just an execution thing as far as writing goes, but yeah. That said, I mean, that's pretty much all I got. I think I'm probably always going to enjoy spending time with Tom Cruise, and certainly Renee Zellweger. Cuba Gooding is hit or miss. That's more based around, I think, his projects. But Tom, I think in this era was still firing dramatically on his best level, because at a certain point, maybe like 10 years after this, he started getting a little bit more robotic. And so it's like you needed a director. His best performances have come through directors stepping in, I think, and saying, hey, let's get XYZ, or the character is just naturally a part of his understanding that he doesn't necessarily need to do a lot in order to channel it. But there's just so many times where I see him kind of going through the motions in terms of his physicality, his looks. He knows how to channel a certain idea, and he does it the same way. It's like his running. He's become incredibly good technically at running. I've heard you talk about that before. And I think some of his performance ideas are the same thing, where he can get a little locked in to expressing himself in a very specific way and giving a very specific look. And it's like, oh man, we need a director to step in and like shake you up and say, nope, you're not doing that today. Yeah. But regardless, I mean, this is fun. And this is one of the last best films Cameron Crowe has done. He did a couple after this, Almost Famous and Vanilla Sky, which were fantastic. And after that, it started to be like, where did Cameron Crowe go? What's he doing?
Yeah.
I think it's an addiction to make a Jerry Maguire and to have the entire country like lose their minds over it and become just this pop culture phenomenon. And then you kind of want that again. And it's a taste of, a smash hit on the radio that you're like, oh, just one more time, please.
I mean, yeah, I guess, but I don't know, maybe because I just love Radiohead so much. They're a great example of the opposite of that. Like, okay, yeah, we'll give you Pablo Honey and you can have a Creep. Yeah, sure. We're never going to play it at any show ever. And we're going to give you OK Computer next. And then we're going to give you the Benz next. And then we're going to give you OK Computer and then Amnesiac and then Kid A. And you're like, where the hell is all this coming from? And yet it's freaking great. I think that Cameron is a great writer, like solid writer, great director. You don't need to make another Jerry Maguire. You already did that. Do something else. Like Vanilla Sky. Like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? That is a perfect thing. You make a Jerry Maguire so everybody thinks that you're awesome, and then you make the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and by good, I don't mean that Jerry Maguire is bad. I mean like the substance. The stuff with meat on it that people are gonna take to sleep with them.
Yeah.
They're gonna wake up with that in their head. With what is it, National Anthem or something that plays the that Radiohead is in that movie. Like, yeah, like it's so good. It's so good. And it's perfectly placed. I forget. It's not national anthem. It's Everything in its Right Place. Where he wakes up, he gets out of bed, he looks in the mirror and he pulls the one gray hair out of his head. Everything in its right place. It's perfect. Perfect. You know?
How did you like?
That was a great marriage, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Cameron, you're the stuff, man.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see him return to something more gritty and intimate, and less Aloha, We Bought a Zoo, more Vanilla Sky, Almost Famous. Like just return to that. How did you feel about Kush doing a little Nirvana there at the beginning?
When he's playing on oh yeah, that was great because that song, I mean, that's like the only song you probably could have gotten away with. I thought it was great. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. Final thoughts.
I loved it. I think it was a great popcorn movie. You know, there might be a few feelings that, like you talked about, I think you put it in a perfect way, perfect light, but I could sit down, like you said, and spend time with Tom Cruise any day, and Renee Zellweger, of course, you know, and Cuba. I mean, that was just a great performance film, I would say. It was good and it's fun, and there's a lot of twists and a lot of turns, and it moved. The pacing was perfect.
Yeah.
In this movie. I mean, you want an example of perfect pacing. This is a great example. Like you said, so much stuff had to happen. And it did. And none of it felt belabored. None of it felt like it could be cut or should be. None of it felt like it was too short. It was great. Yeah.
That's the crazy thing is, like, if anything, I would probably add 10 minutes. Like, give me 10 minutes of
look at
whatever.
You.
Yeah.
I don't think you've ever said that on this podcast. Wow.
There's one scene that I found really, really entertaining and just perfect, which was right before she goes into labor. Marcee, they're all having, like, I don't know, some seafood thing where they're cracking crabs or something. Oh,
yes.
And she starts talking about how she went to the movies and she went to go see a black film, and then all the previews were full of, you know, other black films that were all violent and et cetera, et cetera. And I think it works as a commentary about what Hollywood wanted out of black films during the 90s. But it's also really, really funny when you consider that she and Cuba Gooding Jr. had been in a movie together before. A little film by John Singleton called Boys in the Hood, which is a violent hood film. No, that had a lot to say about, you know, the violence, but I just found that really, really, like, funny and interesting that these two characters are on screen again together, and they include one of these scenes about other black films. Yeah, just a little detail, little footballs.
Cool.
Nice. So what are you going to recommend this week?
Okay, this week I want to recommend an episode.
Ooh.
We talked about it. I want to recommend episode 3 of Last of Us. I don't have any. I don't know why, but that episode just was perfect to me. It was amazing what they did. Now I played the game, and a long time ago, so I need to go back and play it again so that I can, like, find all these Easter eggs that they're putting in here and stuff. But what they took the story from the game and they built a whole nother story around it, and they gave it an entire episode. So this whole episode is not in the game, but the acting is so beautifully done and so delicate and yet so aggressive at the same time. And you're just with these two people almost the whole time. There's no zombies. It's just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And probably my favorite episode of anything I've ever watched, to be honest. I just love it that much. So yeah, episode 3 of Last of Us just blew me away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done. I'm going to recommend a movie I saw a few days ago in the theaters, and it's called Close. And so my favorite film from last year was a French film called Petite Maman. I think it's streaming on Hulu now. And now my probably, this is already in the running for favorite film of the year, is another French film. This one won Cannes. And it's so good. And one of the reasons I love it so much is it's everything that I really want to do in film in every way. Like it was hard to point to something and say, okay, it's close, but it doesn't do this or it does this, and I don't want to do that. It's intimate storytelling. There's no establishing shots, right? You just kind of cut from scene to scene to scene. It doesn't like make use of traditional filmmaking in terms of cinematography. Like it's a lot of handheld. It's very personal. There's no like master shot, mediums, close-ups, reverse, inserts. Instead, it's like, no, we're going to put you right here with this character, and we're going to put you right with them again tomorrow. Like we're just going to jump in between. We're going to let the audience understand what's happening emotionally instead of like telegraph everything that's happening. And it's understated. It really makes you engage with the characters and what they're thinking and experiencing. The camera moves are all motivated. It's a lot of naturalistic lighting. And the camera never moves without a reason. It's not just, oh, this is a cool shot. They don't care about cool shots. They care about emotionally capturing everything, honestly. And it's doing all these things that I just really, really love. And it's powerful. Like it has a very subtle power to it. I just think it's absolutely wonderful. It's an actor's film as much as it's a writer's film and a director's film. Like I would put this as a director's film first, but the writing and the acting are absolutely, amazing. And so, I could not love it more. And so close. Les French Film.
Awesome.
Yeah. Nice. Stay tuned. Hopefully we can do this. Is it still playing in your city?
I'll look.
Okay.
I think so. Yes.
Next week we'll probably be doing The Whale. The Whale, Darren Aronofsky's new film with Brendan Fraser. Check that out, and hopefully you can see it in theater as well. If not, then we will just surprise you with whatever comes next. I know it's still playing here in Austin, and so hopefully it's playing there. If not, we're wanting to go on a decent run of current films, and so maybe we'll do something else like The Menu. I know we have some other dandies coming up, and so stay tuned for that. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review and a subscription. We got a new review up recently, and I will give that a shout out next week. I forgot to write it down, so I don't have it queued up here. But we highly appreciate that. Anything that helps get the word out, it helps us get the bigger our audience gets, the more it's easy, the easier it gets to pull in Cameron Crowe for an interview. Like, hey, man, we love your film. Why did this happen? And we would love to have those conversations that honor someone's craft as well as give them an opportunity to maybe defend it and say, Wes, you're a dummy. Here's why this works. Everything you do in terms of subscribing and reviewing really helps build the show out. And so, we will definitely be doing The Whale next week, FYI. And if you want to drop a note on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Jerry Maguire.
And our quote of the day, man, this is such a great quote to go with what I just said right before we started. I don't even know it was Phil Knight. Is he a coach, NBA coach? He
is responsible for Nike, basically. That's the best way to think of it. Like he got Jordan to be, the sponsor for Nike, and Jordan.
Okay.
I think we've all heard of him. So yeah.
Doug Jordan, right? Yeah. Anyway, this our quote of the day is from Phil Knight. The cowards, wow, it's so good. The cowards never started, and the weak died long along the way. That leaves us, ladies and gentlemen, us. So, like, you take that and you put that in any situation.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's great. I've already said what I wanted to say at the beginning of this podcast. It goes perfectly with this quote. So I'm just going to take this and write it down and leave it in my room.
I love it. Like, that's one of the other cool things about this movie is it's a guy who stood up for something he believed in, left to start over again, and he did it. Like, we don't see the ultimate fruit of all that work. I wouldn't mind a Jerry Maguire 2, the Maguiring. Wait a minute. Oh my God. But you know, it's really cool as a motivational thing to be like, you know what? It's okay to start something. I mean, I left a corporate career that I was building in order to be a filmmaker, and I still haven't really seen the fruit of that labor in terms of what I set out to build. And you know what? Maybe I never will. Maybe this is just my Sisyphus act of I pushed this up the mountain because that's what I do, and until I can, you know, get over it, that's all I'll continue to do. And I love seeing something like this that says it's okay to start over again, and maybe it doesn't go the way you want. You know what? Cowards never started anyway. And everyone else who did and was weak, they died, they gave up. And so, you know what? That's us. Everything else is us. We keep going. Doesn't matter if we haven't arrived yet, we keep going because that's what we do.
Yeah. So good. So good. Excellent. Thank you for that quote.
Awesome.
And thank you guys for sticking with us. I know this was a long one, but we had a lot to say. And you know what? I think this episode was a little bit for us too.
Yeah.
But thank you for sticking with us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please, like Wes said, subscribe, review, leave us a review. It all matters. And if there's a film you'd like to see us do, please make a suggestion. Maybe we'll do it. Until next week, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.
Yeah.
Show me the money. The way he yells that is so good.
He's like got this crazy and his pitch is going wild. The money!